All right, thanks everybody for coming. So my presentation is going to be kind of how the business has evolved and how identity and APIs especially have become really important to the way the business is trying to transform itself. Okay, sorry. There we go. So again, a short story. You know, how is it that we're enabling the business to become the healthcare cloud? Or as I like to call it, how the security dog finally caught the car. And that's a reference to, I don't know if you guys know Gunnar Peterson. He's actually someone who's given keynotes here at CIS, kind of similar to Steve. This is my fifth one, the first time I present, and I'm excited to also finally share some of my experiences. So this is kind of the catalyst. You had this blog posting a few months ago, I won't say last winter, and I replied to it, and he thought it was kind of funny because I was mentioning that it didn't feel like we caught the car. It feels like the business slammed on the brakes and kind of backed up and rolled us over. But in essence, But first, I want to start with who we are. I've already had like 5 people ask me like, hey, you switched jobs? You're Optum now? So it's like, no. So UnitedHealth Group is really divided between 2 sides of the house. There's the provider side, the UnitedHealthcare, and then there's the services side, Optum. So within Optum, we work with a lot of our competitors and a lot of the data services that we offer. So we have a bank, we have a prescription service, and so IT is one of the services available. So now the story of the chase. So how did this work out for us? What did we go through in the past 10 years to get to where we are now? So the biggest challenges for us in the previous 10 years as we grew as a company was a lot about selling the value of WAM and SAML. It was back in the day where you're trying to justify why you need to do something as simple as web access management on your applications, trying to get people to standardize around how they do their security, getting to the point where we had a lot of acquisitions, a lot of business units that had their own identities. Everything was siloed. And SAML really helped in the sense of improving the user experience. But really, SAML was masking the true identity problems that we had. It made the user experience better, but we weren't solving the core issue that we had at the time. Now we're up to 25 plus million, but at the time, 12 million identities that were just spread out over multiple repositories. And so we did a lot of things like create common security frameworks for registration to try to create some sort of commonality, to make it easier for applications to integrate with our security frameworks. Little by little, it started taking off. We started making some progress. Things started changing in the last 4 years. That's when really things, and more specifically in the last 3. The Affordable Care Act brought a lot of business opportunity for us. We have a rich set of data, whether it's just the hundreds of millions of claims that we go through and all the information that we're able to get out of it for fraud monitoring, for just a lot of the analytics around the kind of data that we have, medical data. And really the opportunity was exposing all that healthcare information that we have and commercializing a lot of the back-end services. We've spent over a decade building these state-of-the-art data centers. We have all these state-of-the-art systems. We're the largest healthcare company, and so we have a huge infrastructure, and it was really about how can we take this and do something with it that goes beyond just our reach. So how can we take advantage of a lot of the changes in the way the healthcare industry is going to make ourselves positioned to be the cloud for others? Side note, with a lot of the ACA rules, you have the concept that 85% of every dollar spent for healthcare has to be on healthcare services. And so a lot of other healthcare companies are really squeezing what they can get out of that 15%. Well, as it turns out, if you outsource a lot of your IT services, that money is shifted to that 85%. And so we've been able to benefit from that, quite frankly, by trying to, again, become the cloud vendor for a lot of these other healthcare companies. So this really kind of took it to the step of not just, how do we become the cloud, and all the different things like enabling the developers. How can they get access to these health APIs that we're offering? Trying to differentiate ourselves by having this rich data that makes it more interesting for you to consider us. Everything from infrastructure, platform, and software as a service. Again, all these different concepts where it's like, host your applications with us, and you get the bonus of the APIs, the health APIs. Healthcare exchanges became something for us. Some of us, including one of my coworkers here, were part of the tech surge that helped resolve some of the stability issues with healthcare.gov. That gave us really good exposure, and we ended up working with additional states that also saw our successes there and said, hey, help us fix our stuff. Some of the states said, you know what, take our public exchange and you run it for us. So as the business went through all this kind of thinking like, we got to do this, we got to change the way the business works, we got to monetize, we got to expose our services, multi-tenancy, commercialize. They kind of stopped and like, wait, security, identity, APIs, we need this, we need those guys. And so like I say in my story, they hit the brakes. They hit the brakes and we caught up to them. And they tied us to the roof and we went for the ride. I mean, they don't love us, so they put us on the roof. So now we work very closely with the business. And so now we're tied with them in their success in the sense that as they're trying to go through this, as they're trying to create the Optum Cloud Marketplace, a place where a lot of the applications that are built using our APIs can be exposed and sold to different providers, if you will. And this is both internal applications. We become a cloud not just for ourselves, if you will, but also for other external companies. The commercialization, again, the healthcare exchanges, this was kind of the scope of what we had to protect, what we had to really build an IDP for. Jeez. So of course, once they discovered us and we became friends, then they're like, well, we need you to deliver the stuff right away. So instead of the old days, you know, like I said, 7 years ago, where we're trying to sell the value of something as simple as a SAML or web access management, now it's like, no, we need all these latest things, we need all these latest technologies, and we need them now. And so we really had to move really quick to be able to deliver what the business needed to transform itself in the speed of the executive. There was a change in culture we had to go through. I mean, not to say that enterprises, don't take downtime seriously, but there's a certain level of difference between the expectations within an enterprise and the way they offer their IT services, where there's some level of acceptance of maintenance, if you will, to moving toward a commercial grade where customers who are not part of your enterprise are going to have higher demands out of you. And so our organization, our group, became really, instead of just being the enterprise identity and access management shop, we really almost became like a small cloud IDP within our corporation. So what did we build? So what did we do? We had a bit of a greenfield to work with. There was, within our cloud, a lot of legacy and a lot of new development that was commingled. When the business is like, let's get everything on the cloud, it's not like they're rebuilding everything to put it in the cloud. We had to be able to support legacy solutions, legacy platforms, as well as the latest and greatest. So we had a model of best of breed. We knew things we liked that worked really well for us. We also wanted to make sure everything was some sort of web service, preferably REST, but SOAP. Again, legacy to the latest mobile. And we had a lot of regulations that we are working toward to be certified against. Again, making sure we have that level 3, that FICAM, RZ, those were requirements of our IDP. And again, the multi-tenancy. We had to be able to have multiple customers, multiple exchanges, and we had to meet all these different needs. That's super high level, ugly picture number 1. This is kind of a high level of what we built for the IDP. The green stuff was our main responsibility. Creating homegrown applications where we did a lot of the identity management functionality exposed as web services. We had an attribute provider that we built, an identity verification service, delegated login services for some of our other systems. Of course, we had our vended PDPs, Ping Federate. We've been customers of Ping Federate since 2003. I mean, we have a long relationship with them and really like them. We have, of course, our Step Up OTP services, SiteMinder, which we've also been a customer of for a long, long time, and some other newer customers like new vendors. Like Axiomatics, Radiant Logic, Unbound ID. And so we really have all these different components put together to really create what we look at as a best-of-breed solution where our goal is just that we have to meet what the business wants when they want it. And if the vendor can't deliver it, we have to build it for them. This top blue part, there's two sides of it. It's the main gateways to a lot of the back-end services. We do a lot with Layer 7 as kind of the API gateway, where we use the developer portal to expose a lot of the APIs, securely, of course. And then OptumIT UI, that's kind of like the UI interface that the customer interacts with, the consumer, the provider. They use our same SDKs that we, these security SDKs that we create to really abstract our entire solution. They use those to get access to the IDP. Kind of another, high-level diagram, kind of showing the blue boxes are kind of, you could think of them as the service layer VIPs, for lack of a better word. And this is kind of getting into more details on what the components look like, how we kind of put things together. And again, we could talk later on if anybody wants to chat offline and in more detail of what we put together. But this is really about how we develop it, where we put vended products and our homegrown solutions together. A lot of our stuff is Java-based on WebSphere. Geez. So underneath the hood, as I was saying, it's a Java-based application. We do a lot of WebSphere. We're huge at WebSphere shops, especially being in Minnesota, not too far from Rochester. With WebSphere's developed, we got some strong talent there. A multi-data center, active. Again, having a very resilient and scalable environment is very key. Again, we try to make sure we abstract as much as possible. It's very important for developers to not care, not know what's beyond those web services. We should be able to have enough modular to replace a product if we need to because it doesn't serve our purpose anymore, and just move things without the developers really caring. So far, our cloud environment has about 4 million users and about 40 plus reliant party applications. Just within our own internal migrations, we're looking at growing up to about 25 million identities by next year. This has been really a catalyst for, again, going back to, I was saying earlier about solving that identity problem that we have internally. We've had all these silos, moving everybody internally to our cloud, as well as the new consumers that we bring in from the outside. That's what we're trying to build, an IDP for the enterprise, but also for, the public. So from the user experience, what do they see? This is our Optum Cloud dashboard. People just basically sign in with your OptumIT. You click on it. State of Massachusetts, their healthcare. If anybody's from Massachusetts and you happen to use the healthcare exchange, when you click sign in, you're using our IDP. At the end of the day, it's simple, right? This is just a regular IDP that you would expect to see. These are some of our, the vendors that we've had a long time relationship with. We continue to partner with them. It's very important to us. Very important to us to have good, strong relationship with them, because often we're trying to push them to solve the things that, of course, we need. And again, it's having a vended solution makes support a little easier, but we don't have the luxury of waiting for roadmaps. It's something that we have to solve one way or another. So no time to slow down. We've started working on what we're going to do next, and we've had a couple of years, and we're looking to, okay, what are the things that we've learned, and what are the things that we have to improve upon? And so more branding flexibility. That's one area that we see that UI. We have a lot of different business segments, and some of them have strong branding that they want to retain. So having the flexibility, we're working with some of the commercial partners where they want to have their own branding on the identity. It's something that we're working to make it easier to do. Automation is huge. So we use catalog services for a lot of our internal provisioning. And one area that I just, that we're expanding into is that within the infrastructure as a service, we're exposing our catalog service so some of our partners can actually come in and request their own infrastructure. And if you can imagine, you are authenticating with that web-based identity, but really on the back end, you have that tie that together to an infrastructure identity system. So that's some of the work that we're still working on, that we kind of have an early release, but we see a lot of re-architecture, and just as the business evolves, making sure we keep up with what they're doing. But our IDP is growing from, again, not just that web API protection, but really down to tying it to that infrastructure protection for the external hosting, the external infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. And as well, of course, on the internal side. For our internal developers, when they go into their catalog service and request their infrastructure, we want the ability to make it as easy as to request integration into our IDP, as opposed to a manual follow-up step of, if you're able to provision your entire infrastructure to deploy your application, well, we want to make it just as easy to also say, click here to integrate into the IDP. We want to move more to REST. We still have a little more SOAP that we want, and get further along the lines with identity tokens for everything, really getting rid of agents as much as possible. Like I said, there's still legacy applications that require agents, and when needed, we'll do it, but really moving away into just tokens. Elasticity is really important for us as we look to the next model. Just as our developers are moving to more container-based microservices, if you want, architecture, our developer community has really embraced OpenShift. As we move toward OpenShift 3 and using Docker with it, we're looking at moving our security framework into that same model. We want to be able to have that same level of dynamic elasticity, especially during enrollment periods where we need more capacity than in other times of the year where we don't need the capacity. So that is at super high level of our IDP and kind of what we've been doing, some of the lessons we've learned. And like I said, it's a continuing evolution of our enterprise solution. It's something that it's a really challenging work. It's very difficult as well, but it's at least for exciting times. So I got 5 minutes left, so hopefully that gives us some time for questions.
Let me run back with this just so they can hear you.
Two totally unrelated questions. Are you going to send out the slides? Would like to see them. I couldn't see some of the details in your architecture, especially.
Sure.
So if you'd be willing to send that out, some of us would love it.
Sure.
Also, just curious what you're using Axiomatics for.
Fine grain. So right now our main pattern for it is around API, fine grain, and authorization. There's a lot of discussion. It's a difficult challenge with Xacaml. A lot of development teams see the need for it, and the difficulty of going through their development cycle and learning how to create policy from the organizational point of view of administrators, of creating those processes where you're controlling the PDP, someone else understands the policy better because they're writing the code and creating that process of how you handle that, because now you're creating a very tight relationship with the developer community. It's made it challenging, and we're working through it. It's not the easiest thing. But in the meantime, some of the easier ways of implementing it are simple things like just, especially within layer 7, where you have a really nice Axiomatics integration within those policies, we're able to start by doing simple things as API fine grain at the gateway side.
So you are using it to protect data of your APIs in a fine-grained manner to make sure that the right stuff gets out and not the wrong stuff?
Yeah, that's our initial use case, essentially, to start deploying in that way. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yep. There we go.
So Carlos, I saw using Ping Federate and SiteMinder both together. Can you explain for what services you were using for SiteMinder and what for Ping Federate?
Sure. Well, Ping we use for SAML-based federation. So we have, like I said, we've been using Ping Federate for 12 years now. And so it's just a really seriously good solution. And so it's mainly used as our IDP or service provider endpoint for federation. And we're mainly a service provider, but within our cloud, we still do some IDP. We're probably like, 85% SP. We're 375 partnerships. So Ping is the foundation for that. And SiteMinder is more on the traditional web access management.
Okay, so not together.
Well, we get them to work together. So they do work together. I mean, when you have a federation transaction come in, we will create an SM session with it.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Can you please elaborate on getting rid of, I think, web agents, you said, more to user tokens? Is it more at the API level or all the stack from the web applications also?
It's the main motivator is the API, right? So as we're moving to, a lot of our applications are really moving toward APIs, and I guess similar to what other conversations I've heard, you know, the legacy portal of the way things were done is really going away, and a lot of applications, including us, are being built just through APIs. And so that kind of changes the way we approach, the way the identity token is passed down. And it becomes a little more challenging with agents. And also with SiteMinder agents and the kind of the architecture they have. They're just not the most resilient things. And so they worked fine for us, but we're looking at moving more toward API-based authentication authorization.
So are you envisioning more having a simple web agent? Because you need a web agent if you still have a web app, right? Or you're completely moving away from it?
I'm moving away from agents completely.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Going? Thank you.